long should your long run be? I'm going to start with the most annoying answer to this question. It depends. I'd like to add this video is aimed at non-elites. You might be aware I'm not an elite runner, so I'm not going to try and fully critique the training programs of people who are considerably better than I am. But hopefully if you're a beginner, intermediate or competitive amateur type runner, then this might have some information that's useful for you. Long runs are most often discussed in the context of half marathons and marathons. And when I'm seeing programs online or I'm seeing the training other people are doing, there does seem to be a lot of emphasis, specifically with marathon training, on the 20-mile long run. So the 20-mile long run from some angles makes a lot of sense. Before a marathon, it makes sense to know that you can cover most of the distance, right? We're going to delve into some of the reasons why a really, really long run is maybe not actually that helpful. Okay, most of you are probably running 3 or 4 times a week. But even if you're running maybe 6 or 7 days of the week, the long run distance you're doing should really still be calculated off your overall running volume, rather than trying to aim for a specific distance. And this is purely because of ability levels. When you look at what the elites are doing and some of their training programs, it's becoming more and more common that a lot of the elite marathon runners are covering the marathon distance in their training runs sometimes, and even if they're sort of at the sub-elite level, they might be doing 30 to 33k long runs as a pretty normal part of their training in the preparation for a marathon. Key thing here is that they're doing it a lot faster than we are. Even at the sub-elite level, a 30k long run is going to take them less than 2 hours to complete. If we go out and cover the same distance, it's taking us a lot longer. A 4-hour marathon runner might take less than 3 hours to complete 30k, but that's still a lot more stress on the body and it's a lot more stimulus that they then need to recover from. Recovery. This is really the crux of the matter. Effective training is about balance. If you're taking yourself too deep into the well too often, it's much harder for you to climb back out. And every time you push that stimulus a little bit too hard, it is harder for you to recover from it. And if you're limiting your ability to recover from these efforts, you're not actually getting the training stimulus you're looking for in the first place. So if you go out for a 20-mile long run 3 weeks before race day, and it takes you more than 4 hours to complete, you might not actually be recovered by the time race day comes around. And if you're not even recovered from that long run, you're not going to have gained the stimulus and the adaptations from it that you were looking to gain in the first place. The other thing to consider with really long runs is that they introduce a much bigger risk of injury, and this is going to be especially apparent for people who are running an overall lower level of mileage in the preparation for something like a half marathon or a marathon. All this means is that you just should approach your long runs in a way that suits you, fits your training and your body. That way you can get the most out of the training stimulus that you're putting in. I will say for some people, if you're running your first half marathon or first marathon, it might be important to you to do that either 10-mile long run if it's a half marathon or a 20-mile long run if it's a marathon. It might be important for you to do that if you just need that like mental boost to know you can cover most of the distance. And this is really going to be the case for people who don't have a time goal in mind. So if you're just trying to get round, then maybe you do that 10-mile long run, maybe you do that 20-mile long run, just so you know in your mind that you can definitely get round it. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeking that mental affirmation of your own ability if it's important to you. If you are going to put your body through such a big stimulus, I'd suggest just make sure you don't do it less than 3 weeks from race day. And then once you've completed that stimulus, just make sure you're really prioritizing sleep and nutrition, and that you're making sure you're fully recovered as much as you possibly can be before race day. If you are a more competitive amateur runner, then it is worth optimizing your long run to suit your needs. However, how we go about this isn't necessarily cut and dried. The expert opinions on how long a long run should be are still very varied. We have some recommendations that suggest your long run should be as little as 20% of your overall weekly mileage, all the way up to the running fitness author Bob Glover suggesting that as much as 50% of your overall weekly mileage is fine as a long run. The reason the percentage methodology is used is because it can really ramp up your injury risk if too much of your running stimulus is concentrated in one run each week. If you can spread the stimulus out a bit, it just means that your body is a bit better able to handle each effort and therefore able to recover a bit faster from each effort. If you push too hard, it takes your body much longer to come back from it. But if you're just constantly pushing a bit and a bit and a bit and a bit, your body can recover a bit faster and you can make those adaptations that you're looking for. A pretty good place to look for inspiration on how to structure a running schedule is to look at the Japanese runners. Now, Japan has the largest volume of sub 220 marathoners in the world, I'm pretty sure. If not, they're like way up there, and they have been for a really long time. So the depth over there is crazy. Most Japanese runners are running twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And this is partially so that they can hit the kind of running volume each week that they've been doing for years and years and years. Some of the classic Japanese runners have been hitting 300k weeks in a normal training week, and they do that by spreading out the stimulus each day over 2 or 3 runs. This means that while they're kind of constantly under some kind of stimulus, they're never really going fully into the well, and they're never really like pushing the body to that hard line, but their overall aerobic volume just becomes enormous. Now, I'm definitely not saying you should immediately go out and start running 3 times a day. Japan is just a really interesting case study to look at. The standard over there is so much higher and so much more competitive than the vast majority of the rest of the world. There's obviously something behind their methodology because they have had that depth and that volume for a really long time now. And if you look at international marathons and half marathons, you'll see there's often Japanese runners up in the mix in the top lot. If you go and try and run a half marathon in Japan, a time that might win a half marathon comfortably in the UK might not even be in the top 100 in Japan. It's kind of ridiculous how many fast half marathon and marathon runners they have. Other suggestions on how long a long run should be are time-based. There is definitely research to suggest that the benefits of a long run start to diminish after 2.5 hours. There's also some to suggest it starts to diminish significantly after 3 hours, but the general consensus does seem to be that longer than 3 hours is really not necessary for most people. Unfortunately, the real answer to how long your long run should be will just come from a bit of old-fashioned trial and error. So I'm sorry I don't have like a hard and fast answer, but hopefully what I've said will help you kind of like narrow it down so you sort of know what to aim for to get the most out of your training. Personally, I get on really well with 2.5 hour long runs up to 3 hours. And I just try and make sure that my long runs are never more than 30% of my overall weekly mileage. If I feel like I need more training stimulus, say I'm training for an ultra and I want to just make sure I'm sort of simulating that late stage of the race fatigue in my legs, just to make sure my legs are kind of prepared for what that's going to feel like, all I'll do is I'll do back-to-back long runs instead of making the one long run longer. So I might do a 3 hour long run on a Friday, and then I might do another 3 hour long run on a Saturday, kind of thing. I will say pace does to some extent play a role here. So if you're a slower runner going out for a 3 hour long run, you're obviously going to be putting your legs through less pounding than a faster runner going out for a 3 hour long run. So there is, to some extent, the ability to go a bit longer if you're running slower. However, that training stimulus is still gonna negate probably at the same rate. And when it comes to figuring out what works for you personally, I did figure out what works for me by making a lot of mistakes first. I got it wrong several times before I started to get it right. And really I'm making this video to hopefully reduce the number of mistakes you're likely to make in your training and to just help you narrow down the search area, as it were. Trying to help you make less mistakes by hopefully you learning from mine. Okay, I didn't want to go into a ton of detail today, so we'll leave it there. Just a little bit of info on how to kind of approach the long run if you're a little bit mystified or you've pulled a program off the internet to train for a marathon and you're just kind of overwhelmed and daunted by how far it wants you to run. So that'll be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.